For 10 years of marriage, my 20s and 30s, it was the most radiant time of my life. My name is Sarah Miller, I am 36 years old. It has been exactly 10 years since I became Leo Anderson's wife. For 10 years, we lived under the same roof, sharing joys and sorrows, trusting each other from the bottom of our hearts. We have an 8-year-old son named Ethan. A lively and energetic boy, he is our pride and joy. Ethan is my sunshine, the greatest gift life has given me. Our home, in a quiet residential neighborhood in Queens, New York, is an ordinary 3-bedroom apartment. It is not a luxurious mansion, but it is always clean and filled with a warm atmosphere. From the cream-colored curtains to the teacup I use for my English breakfast tea, everything was chosen and arranged by my own hands. I was proud of this home, this nest I had carefully nurtured with my own 2 hands. Before marrying Leo, I was the head of the accounting department at a trading company. My colleagues used to call me the Iron Lady. That was how meticulous I was. When it came to money and ledgers, I wouldn't tolerate even a single cent of discrepancy. No number could deceive my eyes, and I never overlooked an ambiguous expense. However, after Ethan was born, my husband said to me, "Sarah, I'm a sales director now. I can provide for you and Ethan perfectly well. You don't have to work yourself to the bone anymore. You can stay home, take care of Ethan, and just focus on our family. That's the most important job for you." I followed my husband's words. I left the company, sealing my brilliant and successful career in a box, and devoted myself entirely to the roles of wife and mother. Our life passed peacefully. Leo was a model husband. He was kind, a man of few words but deep affection. He never once forgot our anniversary or my birthday, and he entrusted his entire salary to me. He had only one slightly unusual business trip schedule, a routine that had continued for these 10 years. Every Monday morning, he would stand at the door with a small black rolling suitcase, kiss me and our son, and say, "I'm off to Chicago. See you on Wednesday." And truly, every Wednesday night, the sound of his suitcase wheels would be heard outside the door. He would return, exhausted but always with a smile. Like a programmed machine, for 10 years, there was never a single deviation. I had grown completely accustomed to this life. Spending 3 days alone with my son, handling all the errands by myself while my husband was away, I never once doubted it. Why would I need to doubt a husband who entrusted his entire life into my hands? To me, those 3 days were simply his work, a sacrifice for our family. This past Monday morning was the same as always. On Sunday night, I had ironed his clothes. Dressed in a navy suit and a crisp white shirt, he looked as smart and composed as ever. He took his suitcase and said to Ethan, "Be a good boy, and listen to your mother. This weekend, Dad will take you somewhere fun." My son happily replied, "Okay, Dad." When I closed the door, the click of the automatic lock echoed, and the house returned to its usual quiet. I looked around the pristine living room, took a deep breath, and began my week as usual. I never dreamed that this Monday morning would be the last morning of my peaceful life. The truth I was about to face would be more complex than any balance sheet I had ever handled, and it would shake the very foundations of everything I believed in. Today is Tuesday. My least favorite day of the week. Not because it is Tuesday, but because it is the exact middle of the 3 days my husband is away, making it feel the longest. It was like a signal that there was still a day and a half until my husband returned. After finishing the house cleaning and preparing lunch for Ethan, I sent my son off to his afternoon tutoring class. I began to organize the closet, something I always did when I had time. I liked seeing my husband's and son's clothes neatly arranged. I brought over the laundry basket with the clothes my husband had taken off before leaving for his trip yesterday, which I hadn't washed yet. I had a habit of carefully checking the pockets before putting clothes in the washing machine. It was an instinct from my days as an accounting director, a need to miss nothing. His wallet and keys from his pants pockets had already been removed by Leo. The suit jacket pockets were empty. When I put my hand into the pocket of the pants he had worn at home on Sunday, my fingertips touched a crumpled, thin piece of paper. I pulled it out and saw it was a common thermal receipt. The ink was slightly faded, and I was about to throw it into the trash with the pocket lint when something perhaps a professional habit stopped me. I unfolded the crumpled paper. My eyes, accustomed to reading small numbers, quickly scanned the text on the receipt. Dreamland Adventure Park, Chicago. Yes. My husband is in Chicago. But Dreamland Adventure Park is an amusement park, isn't it? I furrowed my brow. The next line detailed the purchase. 1 adult admission ticket. And the date was last Tuesday, at 3:30 p.m. I sank onto the edge of the bed. The thin receipt in my hand suddenly felt as heavy as lead. Nothing added up. Leo was on a business trip. He was supposed to be meeting clients, negotiating contracts, handling business. What was such a serious sales director doing on a Tuesday afternoon buying a single adult ticket to an amusement park? Countless questions began to surface in my mind. To entertain a client? Then why only one ticket? The client wouldn't buy their own ticket. He went with a colleague? But if he went with a colleague, why was there only this one ticket? I tried to shake off the ridiculous thoughts. Maybe he bought it for someone else. Yes, he just bought it for them, that must be it. Knowing Leo's kind nature, a friend or colleague might have asked him to, or maybe he bought the ticket but was too busy to go. There were many possibilities. I tried to reassure myself with these logical explanations. I was always Sarah Miller, the one who maintained calm reason. I couldn't be shaken by a single trivial receipt. I was about to fold the receipt and put it away. But as I folded it, the total amount caught my eye. The price for just one adult ticket, for a weekday at an amusement park. At that moment, another memory surfaced. It was about 5 years ago. My old company held a family day event at an outdoor amusement park. I was thrilled and wanted to take Leo and Ethan. Ethan, who was only 3 at the time, was of course overjoyed, but Leo was not. He scowled the entire day. He complained that he despised loud, crowded places, that the screaming and blaring music gave him a headache. That night, after we got home, he even grumbled to me. Don't ever suggest going to a place like that again. I'd rather be in meetings all day. And yet, this man, who hated amusement parks so much, bought a ticket to Dreamland Adventure Park in Chicago on a Tuesday afternoon, by himself? The accountant inside me began to raise its voice. I cannot be. The Leo I knew, and his actions recorded on this receipt, these two things were a clear contradiction. I no longer felt like doing laundry. I took the receipt and went into my small home office. This was the space where I managed our household finances and occasionally helped friends with their tax returns. I opened a desk drawer and placed the receipt in a small tin box where I kept important documents. This was no longer just a piece of paper. It was a question. And I had a vague feeling that I didn't want to know the answer. But I am Sarah. I cannot live with an unresolved problem. I needed a clear answer. The books had to balance. I closed the drawer. The feel of the thin thermal paper still lingered on my fingertips. A thin piece of paper, yet it had torn a very deep gash in my 10 years of peace. I sat in the quiet room, looking out the window. The sun was beginning to set. The color of the sunset, which I usually loved, felt terribly cold today. I realized that from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same. Once doubt takes root, it never disappears on its own. It grows, screaming for the water of truth. A week passed, and Wednesday arrived again. The day Leo would come home. This past week, I lived as if my soul had left my body. I still cooked, cleaned, and took Ethan to and from school. On the surface, I was the same devoted wife, Sarah Miller, but inside, I was a different person. I couldn't get that receipt out of my head. I imagined hundreds of scenarios. He went with another woman. No, that can't be. Leo isn't that kind of person. He loves me and Ethan. He has never once raised his voice at me or shown any suspicious behavior. But if it wasn't a woman, what could it be? That receipt was like a thorn in my side. It wasn't excruciatingly painful, but it was a constant, dull ache. It made me uncomfortable with every move. Every time I looked at our wedding photos, I found myself questioning if the man in the picture was the same man who went to Dreamland Adventure Park alone. I tried to look for other clues, but Leo was too neat. He didn't use social media, his phone was always on his desk, and although I knew the password, I never checked it. I felt that if I did, I would be demeaning myself, admitting that my suspicions were true. On Wednesday afternoon, I heard the sound of the suitcase wheels. Leo was home. Dad! Ethan shouted, running to him and throwing his arms around his neck. Leo lifted our son easily and kissed his cheek. Was my boy good at home? Yeah. I even got a good boy sticker. I stood at the kitchen entrance and smiled. My smile must have been a little stiff, but I prayed my husband wouldn't notice. He approached me, still holding Ethan, wrapped his free arm around my waist, and gave me a light kiss on the forehead. His scent, a mix of Chicago's sun and wind, and the usual smell of fatigue. I'm home. Were you and Ethan okay? Yes. The bath is ready. I'll get dinner started. My voice was surprisingly calm. My heart was beating just a little faster than usual. I wanted to ask. I wanted to pull out the receipt, show it to him, and demand an explanation, but I couldn't. I was scared. Scared that the answer would shatter this family I held so dear. During dinner, Leo talked about work. The same story about a difficult director. The same story about a challenging contract. He served food onto my plate and onto Ethan's. He was still my husband, Leo. That night, Ethan was fast asleep. We lay in bed, the bedroom lights off. Only the faint light from the street lamp outside illuminated the room. I lay with my back to him. "What's wrong?" Leo's voice came from behind me. "You've been acting strange today. Did something happen?" My heart skipped a beat. Did I seem strange? I tried to keep my voice normal. "No, I'm just a little tired. Maybe it's my period." He hugged me from behind. His warm body enveloped me. "If you're tired, you should rest a bit tomorrow. Don't push yourself too hard. Housework is demanding too." I lay still in his arms. For 10 years, this embrace had been the safest place in the world for me. But tonight, it felt suffocating. A lie was on the tip of my tongue. All I had to do was turn around and ask, "Did your work in Chicago last week go smoothly?" He seemed a little surprised by my question. "Yeah, it was okay. A bit tough, though. That Mr. Davis is as difficult as ever. But it all worked out." "Why do you ask all of a sudden?" "No reason, just curious." I closed my eyes. He brought up Mr. Davis again. "Go to sleep. You're tired. Don't think about unnecessary things." He kissed my hair. I replied, "Okay, but how could I not think?" He had just lied to me. I didn't know what he was lying about, but he had definitely lied. The name Mr. Davis sounded like a well-rehearsed excuse. And then I realized a more terrifying fact. If he could lie about work, he could lie about anything. About the business trips, about the receipt, about everything. The receipt was no longer a mistake. It was a beginning. The first piece of evidence that the man I knew as Leo might have another face, a face I didn't know at all. A face that told his wife he was battling a difficult client while spending a Tuesday afternoon alone at an amusement park. That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. For the first time in 10 years, I doubted the man sleeping next to me. And that feeling was more terrifying than loneliness. The seed of doubt had sprouted, and the accountant's instinct that had been dormant in me for 10 years began to awaken. I needed more data, more evidence. A single amusement park receipt wasn't enough to draw any conclusions, but it was enough to start a secret audit. I waited. The next Monday, until Leo once again left for Chicago with his suitcase. The moment the door closed, I sprang into action. I didn't look for emails or text messages. I am a woman of ledgers. I believe in documents. I needed tangible proof. Leo had one good habit. He kept all his business trip receipts in an old file box on the top shelf of the closet. He said it was to organize his expenses at the end of the year, even though his expenses were reimbursed by the company. He was a meticulous person. I had never touched that box. But today, I used a chair as a step stool and carefully took it down. A thin layer of dust covered the box. When I opened it, there were hundreds, maybe thousands, of receipts inside, roughly sorted by month. A chill ran down my spine. This was the record of my husband's business trips for the past 10 years. I carried the box to my office and locked the door. I dumped all the receipts onto the floor. My heart pounded. I felt like a thief, violating my husband's privacy. But the thorn that had been tormenting me for the past week urged me on. I started with the most recent receipts. First, the hotel receipts. They were just as my husband had said. The Grand Sheraton Chicago, a 5-star hotel. A 2-night stay every week. His name, room number, check-in, and check-out dates were all perfect. It seemed the company didn't spare any expense for its directors. I let out a small sigh of relief. At least he wasn't lying about where he was staying. But when I moved on to the food and transportation receipts, everything started to feel wrong. Alongside receipts from a car service app were countless receipts for bike messengers. Why would a director staying at a 5-star hotel to meet clients use bike messengers so frequently? I tried to comfort myself, thinking maybe it was convenient for getting around in congested areas. But what truly shocked me were the food receipts. There were a few receipts from high-end restaurants, likely for client entertainment, but they were a tiny fraction of the total. There were countless other receipts. Receipts from a diner called Mom's Kitchen, receipts from a deli specializing in sandwiches, and even receipts from a smoothie shop. And then a stack of receipts from a supermarket, Jewel Osco, with itemized lists. Diapers, size L, baby formula. Ground pork. Vegetables. My head started to spin. A director staying at the Grand Sheraton Chicago, eating at diners and buying diapers and baby formula? We have no relatives in Chicago, And our son Ethan is 8 years old, he doesn't use diapers. I frantically searched through last month's bundle of receipts. Again, the Grand Sheraton Chicago. Again, Mom's Kitchen. Again, Jewel Osco. This time, there were baby wipes, jars of pureed baby food, and salmon fillets. And then, finally, I found it. Tucked among the pile of receipts was a pharmacy receipt. The medicine was a children's fever reducer. I collapsed onto the floor. My whole body went cold. A plus B did not equal C. Everything was illogical. A man who went on a business trip to Chicago every week for 10 years. He stays in a 5-star hotel but eats at diners. He goes to meet clients but regularly buys diapers, baby formula, smoothies, and children's fever reducer. The scattered pieces began to assemble in my head, forming a picture I desperately did not want to see. One man, and one child. Or multiple children. Diapers, formula, medicine. I shook my head violently, trying to banish the most terrifying thought. No. Not Leo. He couldn't have another family in Chicago. He loves me and Ethan. But the receipts were spread out clearly before me. They were undeniable evidence. They were numbers and facts that had already occurred and been settled. They did not lie. I looked for the Dreamland Adventure Park receipt again. Yes. One adult ticket. If he had another family, he would have bought a child's ticket too. Or maybe the child was too young to need a ticket. Or maybe he went with the child's mother, and she bought her own ticket. It wasn't illogical. I ran my hands through my hair. My logical mind was overloading. Too much contradictory data. A 5-star hotel, a diner, diapers, children's medicine, and one adult admission to an amusement park. Suddenly, I had a realization. It was a fact that he was staying at the 5-star hotel. The receipts were clear. It was also a fact that he was buying children's supplies. And it was a fact that he was eating at diners. Maybe he was only pretending to stay at the 5-star hotel to get the receipts for the company, but not actually sleeping there. No, that couldn't be. I had clearly seen the receipts with check-in and check-out records. If that was the case, then he was staying at the 5-star hotel while also having to care for a child, which meant he had to cut back on his food expenses. A man living 2 lives. Director Anderson of the Grand Sheraton Chicago, and a secret life filled with diners. He was paying for both of those lives. With trembling hands, I gathered the receipts, put them back in the box, and placed it back on the closet shelf. I quickly wiped away the tears that were streaming down my face. A sob escaped me. I didn't know if it was from anger or fear. I realized that for the past 10 years, I had no idea who my husband really was. Was he that brilliant of an actor? Or was I that foolish of an audience? I needed one final piece of evidence. Not a document, but living proof. I had secured the paper trail, now I needed a witness. The name Mr. Davis, which Leo always mentioned, kept echoing in my mind. Every business trip, every difficulty, all the fatigue he brought home was tied to that name. Mr. Davis is too difficult. I got a call from Mr. Davis, I have to go quickly. The contract with Mr. Davis is finally done. For 10 years, this Mr. Davis was like a member of our family. An invisible guest who held immense power over my husband's schedule. If Mr. Davis was a real person, then all these contradictions might just be Leo's strange hobbies. I knew that was unlikely, but if Mr. Davis didn't exist, then the entire 10 years had been a complete fabrication. I had to find out. My chance came that weekend. Leo's company was holding its annual holiday party, and families were invited. Normally, I would have declined. I don't like noisy places or forced smiles. But this time, I agreed immediately. I'd love to go, I told Leo. I want to get out for a bit, and I want to show Ethan where his father works. Leo seemed very happy. He had no idea I was going not to celebrate, but to investigate. The party was held in a large convention center. Dazzling lights and bustling music. I wore a wine-red silk dress Leo had bought me last year. I put on light makeup and tried to appear as calm as possible. Leo held my hand and introduced me around. This is my wife, Sarah. Pride filled his voice. I smiled at everyone, a smile I had practiced in front of the mirror. I left Leo and Ethan at the buffet station, saying I was going to the restroom, and started to move. I was like a leopard in my territory, searching for prey. I wasn't looking for Leo. I was looking for his colleagues, people in the same sales team who would know about the Chicago clients. I quickly identified my target. Mark. A manager under Leo. Mark was outgoing and talkative. I approached him with a glass of orange juice. Mark, hello. It's been a while. Oh, Mrs. Anderson. It's great to see you. You're looking more beautiful than ever. A true director's wife. I can only imagine how much you do for your husband and son at home. Mark laughed heartily. I replied with a gentle smile. Oh, Mark, you flatter me. I'm getting older, you know. Lately, I'm just busy chasing after Ethan and his mischief. After a few minutes of small talk about kids and the weather, I naturally shifted the topic. But really, my husband seems to have it so tough lately. The number of times he goes back and forth to Chicago. Just looking at the pile of hotel receipts at home makes me feel sorry for him. Mark nodded. That's how it is in sales, Mrs. Anderson. Director Anderson actually has it better than most. The Chicago market is stable. The rest of us have to fly all over the country. I hear his main contact there is a Mr. Davis. He must be incredibly difficult. My husband is always complaining about him. I offered to make him some New York cheesecake as a gift, but Leo just said that man dislikes that sort of thing. I spoke like a naive wife, frustrated with her husband's stubbornness. Mark's hand, which had been reaching for a salad, froze in midair. He stared at me, a look of confusion on his face. Mr. Davis? I nodded. Yes, Mr. Davis. Leo says he's with a very large group. Mark let out a snort of laughter. It was a genuinely amused sound. Mrs. Anderson, you must be thinking of someone else. There's no Mr. Davis in Chicago. Our biggest client there is Apex Construction, and the account is handled by Miss Reed, the managing director. That woman is a real iron lady, but who's Mr. Davis? Mark was still laughing, but I wasn't. I don't know how to describe how I felt at that moment. It was as if all the surrounding sounds faded away. The music, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, everything disappeared, and only Mark's words echoed in my head. There's no Mr. Davis. It's Miss Reed. I felt my legs start to tremble. I barely managed to hold onto a table to stay upright. 10 years. For 10 years, my husband had been talking about a man who didn't exist. A name he made up. Why? Why couldn't it have been Miss Reed? Because she was a woman? Oh, I must have gotten it mixed up. I forced a smile, though I knew it must have looked distorted. Was it Miss Reed? Yes, I think it was Miss Reed. No wonder he said she was difficult. Well, Director Anderson is very capable. He handles her all by himself and keeps bringing in contracts. Now, Mrs. Anderson, you should get something to eat. I have to go say hello to the executives over there. Mark patted my shoulder and walked away. I stood there, as if rooted to the spot. The glass of orange juice in my hand felt as cold as ice. In the end, there was no Mr. Davis. There was only a Miss Reed, and diapers, and a fever reducer, and a diner, and one adult admission to an amusement park. The picture became clearer. Cruelly clear. A woman, and a child. I felt as if someone had squeezed my heart. Betrayal. It was no longer a small thorn. It was a sharp blade. Without a second glance at Leo and Ethan, I fled the party. I ran into a restroom and locked the door. I looked at myself in the mirror. A woman with red, bloodshot eyes and trembling lips. That wasn't me. I was the Iron Lady, Sarah Miller, a strong and logical person, but the woman in the mirror was crying. I had gathered enough evidence. The 10 years were a lie, and I could not live in that lie for another day. I had to go. I had to go to Chicago and see with my own eyes who this Miss Reed and this child were. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to Leo, who was sleeping soundly after the party. His breathing was regular, but to me, it sounded like a stranger's. Who was this man who had slept beside me for 10 years? I had already cried until my tears ran dry in the restroom. Now, only a hollow emptiness and a cold determination remained in my mind. The truth. I needed the truth. I couldn't ask him directly. He was a great actor, he had deceived me perfectly for 10 years. If I asked, he would create another Mr. Davis, another reason. He would try to soothe me with his kindness again, and maybe I would believe him again. I was afraid of my own weakness. No. I couldn't ask. I had to find out for myself. I had to catch him in the act. I needed a plan. A plan as perfect as the one he had used to deceive me. The next morning, I behaved as usual. I made breakfast and talked about the party last night, about how funny Mark was. Leo suspected nothing. He just laughed and said, "Mark's always been like that. You were probably just not used to him." The following Monday was the day of reckoning. I had 1 week to prepare. First, I had to arrange for Ethan's care. I couldn't take my child with me. I called my mother in the countryside. Mom, I've been so stressed lately, and housework feels like an endless loop. Could you come and stay with me and Ethan this weekend? My mother was concerned. What's wrong? Did you and Leo have a fight? No, no. I'm just a little worn out. Oh, and Mom, I have a close friend in Philadelphia who just had a baby. I was thinking of going to see her for a few days. Could you come here and watch Ethan for me? I'll leave on Monday and be back on Wednesday. I lied to my mother. The first lie of my plan. My voice trembled, but I held it steady. My mother quickly agreed. Of course, go. You need a break. I'll take good care of Ethan. Next were the plane tickets. I didn't use our home computer, I used a computer at the public library to book my tickets. A round-trip ticket between New York and Chicago. Departing Monday morning and returning Wednesday afternoon, the same schedule as Leo. However, I booked an earlier flight out and a later flight back. I also booked a hotel. Not the Grand Sheraton Chicago. I found a small, clean business hotel a few hundred feet away, across the street. A place where I could monitor the hotel's main entrance. Now I needed a reason to tell Leo. Honey, next Monday, I'm going to Philadelphia. A close friend had a baby and is feeling a bit down, so I want to be there for her for a couple of days. My mom is coming to stay and look after Ethan. Leo looked a little surprised. So suddenly? You could have gone with me on a weekend. My friend needs me now. 2 days will fly by. You go on your business trip as usual, and I'll be back before you are. Leo nodded. I see. All right. Be careful. And buy something nice for the baby. He handed me an envelope with cash. Take this and use it. Don't be shy. I took the money. My hands were as cold as ice. He trusted me so completely. Or perhaps he was too busy with his own secret to have the capacity to doubt me. The week flew by, and all preparations were in place. My suitcase, and his suitcase. 2 suitcases, 2 secrets. On Monday morning, my mother arrived. The house was more lively than usual. Leo woke up early, kissed Ethan and his mother-in-law, then turned to me and asked, "What time is your flight?" 9 o'clock. Go on ahead. Okay. Be careful. Call me when you get there. He hugged me tightly. My body stiffened in his arms. You too. Be careful. He left, pulling his suitcase. The usual sound of the wheels. But today, that sound was like a countdown. Waiting for him to be gone, I said to my mother, "Mom, I'm leaving now, please take care of Ethan." I picked up my own suitcase. I wasn't going to Philadelphia. I was flying into the eye of the storm of my life. On the plane, I couldn't calm my nerves. Every time the plane shuddered slightly, my heart dropped. I wasn't afraid of heights. I was afraid of what might be waiting for me in Chicago. What I'm doing is insane. A wife secretly following her husband. What would Leo think if he found out? What if I was wrong? What if this was all just a ridiculous misunderstanding? How could I face him? But each time, the receipts, the name Miss Reed, and the image of a mysterious child came to mind. No. I'm not wrong. I have a right to know the truth. Chicago greeted me with the hot sun of the Midwest. The air felt completely different from New York's. I quickly hailed a cab and went to my booked hotel. The hotel was on a small street, diagonally across from the Grand Sheraton Chicago. From my room window, I had a clear view of the 5-star hotel's glamorous main entrance. I checked in. The room was small, barely fitting a bed and a desk. It had a faint musty smell. I pulled a chair right up to the window and sat down. I felt like a detective, and a dry laugh escaped me. I checked my phone. A message from Leo had arrived. Landed. Heading to the hotel now. Have you left yet? I replied, waiting at the airport, my flight is delayed. Another lie. I was getting used to lying. I sat there and waited. I couldn't count how many lavishly dressed guests went in and out of that door. I imagined what Leo was doing in there. Taking a shower? Or had he rushed off to meet that Miss Reed? I couldn't take my eyes off the place. For dinner, I ordered delivery to my room. I didn't want to miss a thing. Monday passed uneventfully. I didn't see Leo come out. Perhaps he was only working inside the hotel, or maybe he left through a back exit. I started to get anxious. My plan had a loophole. Tuesday morning, the day of the Dreamland Adventure Park receipt. I was up at dawn. My eyes were glued to the main entrance. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Breakfast was a stale pastry I had hastily bought the night before. At 9 o'clock, the hotel doors opened, and a familiar silhouette walked out. Not the attire for meeting a client. He looked around and then started walking down the main street. I quickly grabbed a hat and sunglasses and flew out of the room. "I'll check out later," I yelled to the front desk clerk. I followed him from a safe distance. Leo walked quickly. He didn't hail a cab. He walked about 2 blocks away from the hotel, toward an old residential area. I hid behind trees and parked cars. I felt like I was in a cheap movie. He turned into a small alley. I hesitated. If I followed, I might be seen. But if I didn't, I would lose him. I decided to follow. It was a dead-end alley. At the end of the alley stood an old apartment building. Leo stopped in front of one of the units, the one at the very end. He raised his hand and knocked on the door. The door opened, and a young woman came out. I was hidden in the shadow of a wall. I couldn't see the woman's face clearly. I could only see that Leo was smiling. A bright smile that I rarely saw. He said something, and they both went inside. The door closed with a thud. I stood there, frozen. In the shadow of the apartment wall, sweat trickled down my back. Wasn't he staying at the Grand Sheraton? Yes, he was, but during the day, he was spending time with a woman in this old apartment. Miss Reed? No, that couldn't be. A woman called the Iron Lady wouldn't live in a place like this. Then who was this woman? I wanted to pound on the door, scream, and barge in, but I didn't have the courage. I backed away and left the alley. I returned to my hotel and collapsed on the bed. So, it was true. He had another woman. A woman living in an apartment. He was staying at the 5-star hotel to deceive his company, but in reality, he came here, ate at diners, used bike messengers, and saved money for that woman and her child. The diapers and formula were for their child. My chest felt like it was about to burst. 10 years. My 10 years. I don't know how long I lay there like that. When I came to my senses, the sky was already painted with the colors of sunset. It was past 3 o'clock. At this time last week, he was at Dreamland Adventure Park. What should I do now? Should I go back to New York? Or should I stay here? No, I've come this far. I can't go back like this. I had to see that woman's face. And that child's face. I changed into different clothes and headed back to the alley. But this time, I didn't go in. I sat at a small cafe at the entrance of the alley. I waited. Evening came, and lights started to come on in the alley. And finally, the door of that apartment opened. Leo walked out, followed by the same woman. This time, a child was in her arms. A boy who looked to be about 7 or 8 years old. I thought my heart would stop. And then Leo did something I will never forget for the rest of my life. He turned back naturally and gently brushed away a strand of hair that the wind had blown across the woman's face. It was an incredibly tender gesture. They stood there, exchanged a few words, the woman laughed, and the child rested his head on his mother's shoulder. They looked unmistakably like a family. Leo waved, turned, and quickly walked out of the alley. He was heading back toward the Grand Sheraton, back to his 5-star life, leaving me alone in the cafe with the brutally cruel truth. Tuesday, the day of reckoning, passed like a nightmare. I had seen her. The woman. The child, and Leo's tender gesture. I didn't go back to the hotel right away. I wandered aimlessly through the streets of Chicago. The neon signs of the big hotels illuminated the pavement, dazzling my eyes. I just kept walking without a destination. My mind was a mess. The image of Leo brushing the hair from the woman's face replayed over and over. It hurt more than being slapped. A slap only hurts the skin, but that image gouged out my heart. He had deceived me. It wasn't a simple lie. He had betrayed me. I finally returned to the hotel after midnight. The damp, musty room welcomed me. I realized it was Tuesday night. Leo would be sleeping at the Grand Sheraton. He would send me a message. As expected, my phone screen lit up. Still awake? Meeting with the client ran late, so tired. Miss you and Ethan. I stared at the message until it felt like I could burn a hole through it. Meeting with the client. So tired. I threw my phone against the wall. It hit the wall and landed on the mattress, thankfully unbroken. I sat down and let out a tear-filled laugh. He was truly a great actor. So great, I didn't know whether to be relieved or disgusted. Wednesday morning. Today, he goes home. I go home today, too. But I couldn't go back like this. I couldn't return to New York and wait for the divorce papers as if nothing had happened. No. I am Sarah, an accountant. All the books must be clear. I had to know who that woman was, whose child that was. I was terrified, but after the shock of last night, the fear had turned into something else. A cold anger. I headed back to the alley again. This time, I didn't sit in the cafe. I walked straight to the apartment at the end of the alley. What was I going to do? Pound on the door and grab her by the hair? No. That wasn't my way. I stood there for a moment. I saw a basket of old toys hanging in the window. I took a deep breath and turned around. I went to the market, bought a bag of fruit and a carton of milk. Then I went back and knocked on the door. I didn't know what I was doing myself. I just felt I had to. A few seconds later, the door opened, and the woman stood before me. She was young. Much younger than I thought. With a familiar shadow in her face. Dark circles under her eyes, wearing an old house dress. She looked at me with surprise. Who are you? Her voice was also familiar. I held out the bag of fruit. My voice trembled. I'm a friend of Leo's. He asked me to give this to you. Another lie. I was sinking deeper and deeper into the mire I had created. The woman was stunned. A friend? A friend of Leo's? She looked at me, then at the bag of fruit. Leo told me he had a sudden meeting and asked me to apologize to Amy for him. I took a gamble. I didn't know her name, I just blurted out a random one. And I was right, or almost right. The woman's face changed. Mommy, who is it? A child's voice came from inside. And a little boy ran out. The same boy I had seen last night. But this time, in the daylight, right in front of me, I froze. The boy didn't just resemble Ethan. Was that Ethan? No, it couldn't be. But he looked so much like Ethan it was as if my own son was standing before me. The boy saw me and hid behind his mother. The woman, finally snapping out of her daze, stared at me. Her eyes were full of suspicion. Who are you? I couldn't answer. My throat was tight. I stared at the child. And in that moment, I realized why the woman's face was so familiar. She had the shadow of Leo in her. She looked like Leo's twin brother, Ryan, who had passed away 10 years ago. He stammered, "You're Amy. Aren't you? Ryan's wife?" The woman was shocked. She took a step back. "How did you know that?" I dropped the bag of fruit. Milk splattered everywhere. The truth was different from what I had imagined. It wasn't another woman. It was something far more complicated. I stood there, as if nailed to the spot, in the middle of scattered fruit and a puddle of milk. The child, frightened, burst into tears and clung tightly to his mother's leg. The woman named Amy quickly scooped up the child and backed into the house. Her eyes, as she looked at me, were filled with fear and suspicion, as if I were a wild animal. "Who are you? How do you know my name? How do you know my husband?" She cried out in a hoarse voice. My mind was a chaotic mess. A child who looked like Ethan's twin, a woman who resembled both Leo and his deceased brother, the names Ryan and Amy, it was all jumbled together. I'm Sarah. Leo's wife. As I uttered those words, Amy froze. I watched as her suspicious expression transformed into something indescribable, a mixture of shame, fear, and despair. "Please, come inside," she finally managed to say after a moment. I stepped into the apartment. It was a small space, about 100 square feet. It was cluttered with old furniture and smelled of dampness and medicine. The boy had stopped crying and was sitting on an old folding bed. He watched me with large eyes, just like Ethan's, but his face was so pale, and his lips were colorless. "I'm sorry for showing up so suddenly like this." I sat on the only plastic chair available. "His name is Caleb," Amy said. "He looks just like my Ethan," I said, as if in a trance. "Ethan is my son." Amy looked down. "Caleb is Ryan's son. Since Ryan and Leo were twins." "Yes. Twin brothers. It was only natural that their sons would resemble each other. I had forgotten that fact." "Leo, your husband, has been helping us," Amy continued in a trembling voice. "Since Ryan passed away. He's the only one who knows." "I saw the receipts," I interrupted. But what receipts had I seen? Receipts for diapers, formula, and medicine, not for a mistress. Didn't he tell you?" Amy looked up at me with a hopeful gaze. "No," I replied. "He didn't say anything." The hope vanished from Amy's eyes. She looked down again. "Please, don't cause any trouble for him. He's been through so much. We owe him everything." "I'm not trying to cause trouble for him," I said. "I just want to know why. Why he had to lie to me." "It's my fault." Amy started to cry. Tears streamed down her weary cheeks. "Caleb is very sick." This was the heartbreaking scene. Not a scene of an affair, but a helpless mother crying next to her sick child. "What kind of illness?" I asked. "Aplastic anemia. His bone marrow isn't working properly. The doctors say he needs long-term treatment, and it costs so much money." "If we don't have the money," Amy couldn't continue and covered her face, sobbing. Seeing his mother cry, Caleb looked like he was about to cry too. I looked around the room. Smoothies, medicine, and the ticket from Dreamland Adventure Park from last week was taped to the wall like a treasure. That amusement park ticket, I pointed. Amy wiped her tears and said, Leo. He bought that. Caleb was feeling a little better last week and kept begging to go. Leo took him, and they were only there for an hour, but you should have seen how happy he was. He taped it up there himself. One adult ticket, and one child, who was probably free. All the pieces fell into place. Leo. He wasn't having an affair. He was carrying a heavy, expensive, and deeply human secret. He had deceived me. But who was he trying to protect by lying? Amy and Caleb? Or me? I no longer felt anger. Instead, a complex mix of respect and pity washed over me. Pity for him, pity for them, and pity for myself, who had been excluded from this secret. I sat in Amy's apartment for a while longer. Her sobs subsided. Caleb, tired, had fallen asleep in his mother's arms. His face was peaceful, but his paleness was undeniable. I understood, but understanding didn't immediately mean forgiveness. Why didn't he tell me? I asked again. This time, my voice was calmer. Amy shook her head. I don't know. I asked him, but he said you had just given birth to Ethan and were fragile, and he didn't want to worry you. And as time went on, I think it became a habit. Once you start lying, it's hard to stop. Ryan didn't die in an accident, did he? When I asked this, Amy was stunned. No. Leo told me it was an accident. That man was a hero, Amy said with pride in her voice. He saved a child who fell into the water off the coast of Chicago, but he couldn't get back up himself. Another blade. My husband had even lied to me about his brother's death. I stood up. I understand. Thank you, Amy. Amy looked at me with anxious eyes. What are you going to do? Please, don't tell Leo you came here. He'll be furious with me. I won't, I replied. This is between me and him. I left the alley. The Chicago sun was still hot, but I no longer felt its heat. My heart was as cold as ice. I knew the truth. But this wasn't the truth I had wanted. I had wanted to catch him in an affair. It would have been painful, but simple. A divorce would have ended it. But this was a complex issue tangled with morality, duty, and a dying wish. I returned to my hotel. Leo had probably left the apartment by now. He would be back at the Grand Sheraton, having lunch, and preparing for his afternoon meeting. He was supposed to fly back to New York this afternoon. I had to go back too. But I couldn't go back empty-handed. I needed a plan. Not a plan to expose him, but a plan to bring everything to the surface. My way. I sat in my room and thought. If I went back to New York and said, I know everything, he would crumble. He would apologize. And then what? Would he continue sending money secretly? Or would we fight about the money? No. I had to make him tell me himself. I looked at the clock. 1 p.m. I called Leo. My heart pounded furiously. Hello? It's me. I heard Leo's voice, as calm as ever. How's Philadelphia? Is your friend okay? I'm fine, my voice trembled. Where are you now? At the hotel. Just finished lunch, about to head into a meeting. I'm flying back this afternoon. What's wrong? I took a deep breath. I'm not in Philadelphia. There was silence on the other end. I'm in Chicago right now. The silence stretched on. I could hear him breathing. Hello? What do you mean? I'm in Chicago. I'm at the Grand Sheraton. Another lie. But this time, a calculated one. What are you doing there? Leo's voice changed to alarm. Why are you there? I came to surprise you. I'm in room 1708. Don't move from there. Don't go anywhere. I'm coming right now. He hung up. I quickly stood up. I had taken a gamble. If you're at the hotel now. If I lie and say I'm in your room. I had picked a random room number. He would rush up. And when he found I wasn't there, I flew out of my hotel. I crossed the street. I ran into the lobby of the Grand Sheraton. I had to get to the 17th floor. I didn't have a key card. I ran to the elevator. Luckily, other guests were waiting. I got on with them. I pressed the button for 17. I didn't know if 1708 was really his room or if someone else was staying there. It was a complete guess. I stood in front of room 1708. What now? Should I knock? Just then, the elevator door at the end of the hall opened. Leo rushed out. He saw me. He froze about 20 yards away from me, and I was right in front of the door to 1708. We stared at each other. And in that moment, I knew I had won the gamble. Room 1708 was his room. He looked at me, then at the door. His face went completely white. My being here meant I knew something, he must have realized. But he couldn't have known what I knew. The hallway, with its plush carpeting in the five-star hotel, was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Leo stood at the end of the hall, and I stood in front of room 1708. A few seconds passed that felt like an eternity. Neither of us moved. Finally, he started walking slowly toward me. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the door of 1708 as if it were a monster. He stopped a few feet in front of me. "What are you doing here?" His voice was hoarse. "I came looking for you." My voice was surprisingly calm. "It seems you believed me when I said I was in room 1708. He closed his eyes. An immense fatigue appeared on his face. He realized I had trapped him. "How did you know this room?" A wild guess. He gave a bitter smile. "Impressive. You were always an impressive woman. Aren't you going to invite me in?" I asked, gesturing to the door. "We can't talk out here forever." He looked at me with a complex gaze. "Come in." He took a key card from his pocket. The door opened with a dry beep. I went inside. It was a luxurious room, at least 3 times the size of Amy's apartment. The scent of a fragrant air freshener. His suitcase was neatly placed on the rack, and the suit he would wear back to New York was carefully hung on a hanger. This was his 5-star world. He closed the door. The click of the lock sounded like the end of everything. "How long have you known?" he asked, his back still to me. He was looking out the window at the city view. "That you have a non-existent Mr. Davis? Or that you stay in a 5-star hotel but eat at diners? Or that you buy diapers and children's fever reducer?" With each of my questions, his shoulders trembled slightly. "Or that there's a woman and a child in an apartment at the end of an alley?" I whispered the last question. Leo spun around. There was no color in his face. "You went there? You went there, didn't you? What did you say to them?" He rushed toward me and grabbed my shoulders. "What did you do to them? Hey, you didn't do anything to that mother and child, did you?" His grip tightened. He was afraid. Not afraid of what I knew. He was afraid I would hurt them. It didn't hurt physically, but my heart ached. He was protecting them from me. I looked straight into his eyes. "I didn't do anything. I just listened and saw. I saw Amy, and I saw Caleb." Those 2 names were like a sedative. The strength gradually left his arms. He stepped back and sank onto the bed. "You know everything," he whispered. And then he looked up at me. His gaze was no longer that of a director. It was the gaze of someone caught, someone who had exhausted all their energy. "You know everything." And then he cried. My husband, the man who didn't even cry when his father died, the man who had played a role for 10 years. Now, he sat on the bed of a 5-star hotel and cried like a child. He wasn't crying out of shame. He wasn't crying because he was caught. I heard his sobs. They weren't just cries. They were wails. The wails of someone who had been suppressed for too long. The wails of fatigue and pressure, and the loneliness of being trapped in his own secret. This was the real tearing down of a wall. Not Amy's, but Leo's. His secret wall had finally been thrown wide open by my hands. And inside, there was only a tired, crying man. I stood still, watching Leo cry. I didn't approach him, didn't offer him a tissue. I just let him cry. Perhaps for the past 10 years, he had wanted to cry like this just once. This luxurious room was like a stage. And Leo, after performing the role of a successful director and a perfect husband for 10 years, was finally able to take off his mask. After a while, his crying subsided. He wiped his face with a clumsy hand. "Sit down, Sarah," his voice was hoarse. I pulled a velvet chair from beside the desk and sat across from him. We were like we were in a negotiation. The final negotiation of our 10-year marriage. "I'm sorry," were the first words he said. "I don't need an apology," I replied. My voice was colder than I expected. "I need an explanation." "Why? Why Amy, and why Caleb?" He looked at me with his red, bloodshot eyes. "If you saw them, you'd know. That boy looks just like Ethan, doesn't he? Like twins. He's Ryan's son. Ryan and I were twins, you know that." "I know. But I didn't know Ryan was a hero." Leo was stunned. "Amy. She told you that much?" "Amy said Ryan died saving someone. But you told me he died in an accident." Leo hung his head in defeat. He clasped his hands together, squeezing them tightly. "I didn't want you to know. You didn't want me to know he was a hero?" Or you didn't want me to know you had a burden? Both. Leo looked up. The day Ryan died, I was there too. I was the one who pulled him out of the water. He was holding my hand tightly, but he didn't say a word. He just looked toward Amy. At that time, Amy was pregnant with Caleb. He paused. As if the memory was too painful. Amy collapsed, went into premature labor. Caleb was born weak. And the doctors said he was sick. Aplastic anemia. Bone marrow failure. Do you know what kind of disease that is? I shook my head. It's a money-eating machine. You have to keep pouring money into it, or he dies. Blood transfusions, platelet transfusions, and the medicine costs more than gold. Then Leo looked at me. That was right around the time you had just given birth to Ethan. You were recovering from a difficult birth, your body was weak, and you were a bit depressed. Remember? You cried every day. Just holding our son and crying. I remembered. It was the darkest period of my life. I was weak. I looked at you, at Ethan, and then at Amy and Caleb. 2 children born months apart, one healthy, one hovering between life and death. Ryan's father was gone, and my mom, you know, her heart is weak. I couldn't tell her. I was the only man left. I had to do it. But where was the money? My salary back then was peanuts. If I told you in that state, you would have collapsed, and our family, the family we had just built, would have fallen apart. His voice choked. So I chose to lie. I lied that Ryan died in an accident to ease your mind, and I told the company I had connections in Chicago and could get contracts, so I won the business trips. I lied to Miss Reed that I would take on all the difficult work if she just signed the contracts. And I lied to you that I was going to see Mr. Davis. 10 years, Sarah. 10 years. He laughed. I'm a professional liar, so the money? I asked the accountant's question. Where did the money come from? Company fraud. I said I was staying at the Grand Sheraton and got reimbursed by the company, but in reality, I just checked in and went to Amy's place. I rode bike messengers, ate at diners, and saved the money. I poured that money into Caleb. My salary, my bonuses, everything. I saved every single penny like a miser. That Dreamland ticket was for Caleb. That kid has barely ever been outside. That day, he was feeling better and begged me, so I couldn't say no. Just the 2 of us went. I was silent. The truth was out. Not deception, but sacrifice. A shocking truth. My husband had been supporting 2 families alone. He had to work like crazy, save every penny, and play 2 roles. The director at a 5-star hotel and the man who rode bike messengers and ate at diners. And I was at home, complaining that my husband had too many business trips, enjoying the life of a director's wife. I knew nothing. I was shocked. By the truth, and by my own foolishness. I sat in the luxurious room, looking at the man I had called my husband for 10 years. He had just told me a story. A story that, if told by anyone else, I would have called a drama. He wasn't the successful sales director, the kind but slightly boring Leo, my husband. He was a silent hero, a great liar, a brother who kept his promise, a wonderful uncle. And a husband who couldn't trust his wife. Too many identities, and all of them were him. And I realized that for the past 10 years, I had only known a tiny part of him, the part he allowed me to see. Why? I asked. This question was different from before. I understand why you started. But why for 10 years? Ethan is grown up, and I'm not weak anymore. Why didn't you tell me? Leo looked up at me. His eyes were full of fatigue. It became a habit. Sarah, he said softly. Like a machine, I just did it. Go on Monday, come back on Wednesday. I didn't know how to stop. If I told you, what would I say? Sarah, actually, for the past 10 years, I've been deceiving you. I have another burden, would you carry it with me? He shook his head. I couldn't do it. I saw you happy, saw Ethan growing up healthy, saw this family at peace. I couldn't bring myself to break it. I thought it was better for me to suffer alone than for our whole family to suffer. What did you think I was? My voice started to tremble. This was the core of it. What kind of person did you think I was? I am your wife. A wife is someone you share everything with, not a doll you put in a glass case. You didn't just carry the burden alone. You robbed me of my right as a wife, as a mother. You shut me out of your life. No, Sarah, it's not like that. I shot to my feet. The tears I had been holding back since the apartment overflowed. Yes, it is. You treated me like an outsider. You thought I was weak, that I couldn't handle hardship. Have you forgotten who I am? I am the Iron Lady, Sarah, the accountant. I can calculate, and I can solve problems. When there are two heads, why didn't you use mine? I cried. I cried for the anger, for being ignored. I'm sorry. Leo stood up and approached me. He tried to hug me, but I stepped back. Don't touch me. I don't need your apology. I don't need your pity either. I came here and found out everything. So what do you want me to do now? Leo asked in a desperate voice. He was afraid. Afraid I would ask for a divorce. I stared at him, at the man trembling before me. What do you want me to do? I don't know either. I came here to catch my husband having an affair. I was ready to divorce you, ready to take custody of Ethan, ready to calculate how much you owed me. But I wiped my tears. You didn't even give me that simple reason. You gave me a heroic tale. What do you want me to do now? Should I hate you for lying, or respect you for your sacrifice? I sank back into the chair. I'm so tired, Leo. I'm so tired. It was true. I was exhausted. From the flight, the stakeout, and this truth. Leo's true identity was revealed. He was a good man, a foolishly good man. And my identity? I was the wife of a foolishly good man, and I was at a crossroads. To be foolish with him, or to leave him. And I knew I couldn't leave him. I regained my composure. The tears stopped. It was time for the Iron Lady, Sarah Miller, to take over. Sit down, Leo, I said. He obediently sat on the bed across from me. I need numbers. Numbers. He was taken aback. Numbers. How much have you spent on Caleb in the last 10 years? Total. Leo shook his head. I don't know. I never counted. A sales director who doesn't count numbers? Unbelievable. Just an estimate. Leo closed his eyes, trying to calculate. The weekly medicine, transfusions, and food. Rent. Probably $3,000 to $4,000 a month. More if he was hospitalized. I did a quick mental calculation. $4,000 a month is $48,000 a year. For 10 years, that's $480,000. An astronomical amount. Where did that money come from? My salary, bonuses, the money I saved on business trips. And I took on a side job. I did some strategic consulting for a small company on the weekends. I told you it was a conference call. I remembered. The nights he would lock himself in his office, saying he had an online meeting, and Ethan and I were not allowed to enter. I thought he was really in a meeting. He was working a second job. $480,000, I said the number out loud. You did that all by yourself? I had no other choice. Amy doesn't work. How could she work? Leo's voice sharpened slightly. With a child that's sick, she has to be with him 24/7. Caleb is really fragile. If she takes her eyes off him for a second, who knows what could happen? She's been through enough. He was defending her again. So for 10 years, you were their only source of income? Not entirely. Leo hesitated. Because Ryan was a hero, Amy gets a survivor's benefit. But you know, that's not nearly enough. It's just a small fraction. A lot of Caleb's medical expenses aren't covered by insurance. Too many out-of-pocket items. I nodded. The books were now clear. Income and expenses. And the expenses far exceeded the income. Why didn't you do any fundraising? Ryan was a hero. I couldn't. Leo shook his head. That's my pride. Our family's pride. As long as I'm healthy and can earn money, I can't hold out my hand for my nephew. Ryan would never forgive me in heaven. A man's pride. It was a very expensive thing. So what were you going to do from now on? I asked. How long were you going to continue this charade? Until Caleb got better? Or until you collapsed? Leo was silent. He had no answer. Because he knew nothing about Caleb's illness. Is it a curable disease? I asked. Leo looked at me. The doctors say the only way is a bone marrow transplant. But we have to find a matching donor. For 10 years, Amy and I have been tested, but we're not a match. Ethan, I said involuntarily. Leo's face went white. What do you mean? Ethan. Ethan and Caleb are cousins, and they look so much alike. Ethan's bone marrow might be a match. No. Leo shouted. He shot to his feet. Don't even think about it. Absolutely not. Ethan is my son. I can't do that. I already owe you and Ethan too much. I can't risk my son's health to save my nephew. You can't say that, I finished his sentence. Leo was desperate. I'd rather Caleb die than let Ethan get hurt. I stared at him. Now I finally understood. This was the biggest reason he couldn't tell me. It wasn't that he was afraid I couldn't bear the financial burden. He was afraid. Afraid that I would be put at this crossroads. A choice between my son and my husband's nephew. And he had made the choice for me. He chose to keep everything a secret so that my son, Ethan, would be absolutely safe. Stop thinking about that, Sarah. Please. Leo sank back down. He looked truly exhausted. I looked at him. This man's burden wasn't just money. His burden was a dying wish, a child's life, and the fear of having to choose. He had lived between those two for 10 years. On one side, me and Ethan, the peaceful, healthy family he belonged to. On the other, Amy and Caleb, the broken, sick family he had to take responsibility for. He tried to protect both, and to do so, he had to split himself in two. Director Anderson of New York, who loved his successful wife and son. And Uncle Leo of Chicago, who secretly saved money, rode bike messengers, and ate at diners. I suddenly wondered if, in these 10 years, he had ever confused the two roles. It must have been hard, I asked. This time, my voice was much gentler. Leo looked up at me. He seemed surprised by my change. He nodded slowly. You can't even imagine, Sarah, he said. Some days, I'd be in a meeting at a 5-star restaurant with a client, and I couldn't swallow my food. The thought that I had to take Caleb to the hospital that afternoon and hadn't secured this month's medicine money. Some nights, I'd be holding you, but I couldn't sleep. You'd be sound asleep, and I'd be awake. What if Miss Reed doesn't sign the contract next month? What if my bonus gets cut this quarter? What if I get a call from the hospital? And I was scared. What were you scared of? That one day I would make a mistake. That I would mix up the two lives. That you would find out, like today. He gave a sad smile. And that I wouldn't be able to take it anymore. If something happened to Caleb, I wouldn't know what to say to Ryan. He was living for a dead man. I suddenly realized. His biggest burden wasn't Amy or Caleb, but Ryan. The shadow of his heroic twin brother. He was struggling to live for Ryan too. He was trying so hard to play the role of a brother, a father, and a husband in Ryan's place that he had failed in his role as my husband. Did you not think that if you told me, I would carry it with you? I did, Leo said. But at first, I was afraid you would collapse, and then I was ashamed. I had been lying for so long, I didn't know how to start. I was afraid you would despise me. A man who only takes care of others and lies to his wife. And I was afraid that you would be like you are now. He pointed at me. Sitting there, calculating, asking how much it costs. Questioning everything like a ledger, and in the end, saying, no. It's too much. I can't agree. I was at a loss for words. He was right. I am an accountant. I would calculate, I would ask, and I don't know how I would have answered. If it had been 10 years ago, when I was suffering from postpartum depression, I probably would have said no. Leo knew me. He knew me too well. He knew the Iron Lady, Sarah, in me, my clarity. And he was afraid of it. He was more afraid of my logic than my weakness. My husband's burden wasn't just money. It was loneliness. Loneliness within his own family. The loneliness of living with a secret he couldn't share. Because he was afraid that the wife he loved would be the first to judge him. I had judged him. I thought he was having an affair. I was ashamed. Ashamed of my complex thoughts, of my suspicion of him. As I was lost in thought, Leo's phone rang. An unknown number. He looked at the screen, then at me, and answered the phone. Hello, this is Anderson. He listened quietly. And then his face changed. Yes, which hospital's emergency room? He shot to his feet. I'll be right there. I'll be right there. He hung up and looked at me in a panic. Caleb. Caleb collapsed. It was a call from Amy. He's in the ER at Chicago Children's Hospital now. Then let's go. I stood up. What are you waiting for? You? He stared at me. I'm going too, I said. I have to see for myself what state that boy who looks just like my son is in. We didn't say anything more. Leo quickly grabbed his wallet and room key. We flew out of the 5-star hotel. He ran like a madman, and I ran after him. He hailed a cab. Children's Hospital, please. As fast as you can. In the car, Leo was trembling. He kept murmuring. It's okay. It's okay. Nothing's wrong. He was reassuring himself. I sat next to him. My heart was a complex mess. All the anger and calculation had vanished, and only worry remained. A strange worry. I was worried about a child I had only met once. Just because he looked like my son, Ethan. We arrived at the hospital. Leo paid the fare without taking the change. He ran into the ER, and I followed. We found Amy. She was sitting on the floor in front of the ER doors, her hair a mess, crying silently. Leo rushed to her. "How's Caleb?" Amy looked up. She saw Leo, and then she saw me, standing right behind Leo. The color drained from Amy's face. "Leo. Why is she here?" "This isn't the time for that," Leo yelled. "The boy. How is he?" "The doctors are in there," Amy pointed to the closed doors. "He was convulsing, and his whole body turned white. I was so scared." Leo punched the wall. "Why?" "He was fine this morning." Just then, the ER doors opened, and a doctor walked out with a serious expression. "Family of Caleb Anderson?" "That's me. I'm his uncle," Leo quickly identified himself. "I'm his mother." Amy also stood up. The doctor looked at the two of them, and then at me. "The child's condition is not good," the doctor said. "He had a seizure due to a high fever, a complication of his underlying condition. We've stabilized him, but his platelet count is dangerously low, and he needs an immediate transfusion. However, the blood bank is currently out of his blood type." "What blood type is it?" "Take my blood." Leo rolled up his sleeve. "Use my blood." "Use mine," Amy also said. The doctor shook his head. "No. It has to be an exact match. The child is O negative. A very rare blood type." Leo and Amy were stunned. "O negative?" Leo stammered. "But I'm B, and Amy is A." The doctor frowned. Then the father. Amy started to cry. "This child doesn't have a father." The doctor sighed. "That's a problem. We're contacting other hospitals, but the child's condition can't wait long." Leo froze on the spot. He had carried everything for 10 years. He had done everything. But now, he was helpless. Helpless in the face of something like a rare blood type. I had been standing silently until now. "O negative." I suddenly remembered. I remembered clearly. When I gave birth to Ethan, I was also O negative. And, Ethan. Ethan was also O negative. The doctor had warned me to be careful, because this blood type was rare. I stepped forward. "Doctor." Everyone turned to me. I am O negative," I said. "Take my blood." Leo, Amy, and the doctor all stared at me in shock. "Are you sure?" the doctor asked with a hopeful voice. "Yes, I'm sure. I am O negative, and my son is the same. There's no mistake." I held out my arm. "Take my blood." As quickly as possible. The doctor didn't ask any more questions. "This way, please." I followed the doctor into an examination room. Leo and Amy were still standing in the hallway, as if rooted to the spot. I could feel Leo's incredulous gaze on my back. I sat in the blood donation chair. A nurse quickly disinfected my arm and inserted a needle. The dark red blood flowed through the tube into the transfusion bag. There was no pain. Just a strange sense of relief. I had calculated, been angry, felt betrayed. But in this moment, as my blood flowed out to save a child, I thought of nothing. That boy looked like Ethan, he was my husband's nephew, and he needed me. That was all. After a while, the doctor returned. "No mistake. It's an exact O negative match. Thank you so much. You're the child's lifesaver." I smiled. "Not at all. I'm just glad he'll be okay." When I came out, Leo and Amy were still standing there. Amy rushed toward me. She didn't say anything. She burst into tears, threw her arms around me, and hugged me tightly. "Sarah." I was flustered. "Amy. What are you doing? Get up." I helped her up. "What can I say?" Amy cried. "Thank you. For saving my child." "Don't say that. He's Leo's nephew." I looked at Leo. He stood there, looking at me. He wasn't crying. He was just staring at me. A gaze I had never seen before. A mixture of regret, gratitude, shame, and awe. As if he was seeing me for the first time. Amy was called to her son's side, and only Leo and I were left in the hallway. I sat down in a chair. I felt a little dizzy. Leo sat down next to me. He didn't say anything. After a while, he reached out and took my hand. His hand was still trembling. "Don't say anything," he said in a hoarse voice. I cut him off. "Are you tired?" He nodded. He squeezed my hand tighter. "I'm sorry for thinking of you that way. That you were a calculating person and would refuse." He paused. "It was a confession." "I thought so too," I confessed. "In the hotel, I thought you were afraid I would refuse. And you were right. I am an accountant. And I do calculate. But..." I looked at him. "There's something you forgot. Accountants are human too. And I am a mother. When I saw Caleb, I saw Ethan. Two children who look so much alike. If it had been Ethan lying in there today, I would have wanted someone, anyone, to help. I looked at Leo. I saw his 10 years of fatigue, and the helplessness he must have felt in front of the ER doors. For the first time in 10 years, I felt I understood him. His burden, his loneliness. He had lied because he didn't trust me. But he had also lied because he wanted to protect me. It was all so complicated. Will that boy be okay? I asked. He will be, Leo said with a newfound conviction. Because you're here, he'll be okay. We sat there, holding hands. For the first time, I felt we were a real couple. A couple facing difficulties together. Not a relationship where he hid, and I found out. The doctor came out and told us Caleb had passed the crisis. My blood had helped stabilize the child. Amy stayed by her son's side. Leo told me to go back to the hotel and rest. No, I said. I'm staying here. You too, but you just donated blood. I'm fine. I want to be here. That night, we didn't sleep at the Grand Sheraton. We slept on a cold bench in the hospital. The hospital at night was eerily quiet. Only the footsteps of nurses, the beeping of machines, and sighs could be heard. Leo and I sat side by side on the bench. No one spoke. Amy was with Caleb, who had been moved to a regular ward. Are you hungry? Leo broke the silence. I can get you something. Some soup maybe? I'm not hungry, I replied. You should eat. I'm fine too. Silence again. Sarah, he called. Yeah? If you hadn't been here today, we would have had to wait for the blood bank, I said matter-of-factly. If we were lucky, it would have arrived in time. If not, it wouldn't have. Why? Why did you do it? He asked the question he must have been wanting to ask since I donated blood. After everything, after I deceived you, why? I turned my head and looked at him. The hallway light illuminated his face, making his fatigue apparent. He was no longer the imposing director. For Caleb. He looks like Ethan, and he's your nephew. Is that all? What did you think? I asked back. That I did it for you? To show you how noble I am? To make you indebted to me for life? Leo looked down. I can't think that. Good. I nodded. I didn't do it for you. It was a lie. It was for Caleb, but it was also for us. I realized that if I had let that boy die, this marriage would have been over, whether we divorced or not. You would never have been able to forgive yourself, and I would never have been able to forgive myself either. You must be so angry with me, he asked. I am. Angry isn't enough. I'm disappointed. You ignored me, Leo. For 10 years, you treated me as a woman who just cooked and spent money at home. You didn't give me a chance. A chance to share the burden. A chance to be a family. I'm sorry. Don't apologize anymore, I snapped, but tried to keep my voice down. I've heard that word enough. I don't need an apology. I need an answer. What are we going to do now? He was taken aback. What are we going to do? Caleb, Amy, and us. What are we going to do? Are you going to continue these business trips, lying to your company, letting them live in that apartment, and keeping me an outsider forever? Leo was silent. He hadn't thought that far ahead. He was just relieved that Caleb had passed the crisis. He hesitated. You're not divorcing me? Divorce? I looked at him. You think I'm going to give your nephew a blood transfusion, go back to New York, and file for divorce? Do I look like I have that much free time? Leo stared at me. Then what's your plan? I'm an accountant, I said. The event has occurred, and the books are a mess. Now it's time to correct the books. Not to erase them, but to rebuild them properly. Rebuild? Yes. Everything was wrong. You, me, this situation. Amy and Caleb can't go on like this. Caleb needs a better environment, and he needs a bone marrow transplant. As I said those 2 words, Leo tensed up again. Sarah, I told you. I know what you said, I interrupted. I'm not talking about using Ethan. I'm saying he needs a bone marrow transplant. And for that, we need money. A lot of money. And we need the truth. The truth? Yes. I can't let you continue this charade. It's too painful for you, and for me. I stood up. We'll spend the night here, and tomorrow morning, you'll take me to Amy's apartment. I need to talk to her. And you're going to call your company and tell them you're sick or something. You're not going back to New York today, and maybe you'll never come to Chicago on a business trip again. Leo was stunned. He looked at me like a stranger. I felt like a stranger to myself too. I was no longer the wife who just did housework at home. I was the Iron Lady, Sarah Miller. I was back. And now, I was going to audit life itself. The next morning, Leo and I left the hospital. Caleb was stable, and Amy looked tired, but had regained her composure. I told her, "We'll come see Caleb at noon. Me and Leo together." A flash of fear crossed her eyes, but she nodded. We went back to our hotels. Leo and I both showered. We didn't say anything. A tense atmosphere hung in the air. He was waiting for my verdict. As we were leaving the Grand Sheraton, I said, "Check out." "Check out?" "Yes. We're not staying here anymore." He didn't ask any more questions and checked out. We walked to the apartment. This time, I was with him. He was no longer sneaking around. He was on his way to see his nephew with his wife. When we arrived, Amy was cleaning the room. It was still cluttered, but neater. "Sarah." "Leo." Amy looked at a loss. "Sit down, Amy," I said. "I need to talk to both of you." We sat down. I was on the plastic chair, and Leo and Amy were on the edge of the bed. It was like a family meeting. "Amy," I began. "Yesterday was tough with Caleb's illness." Amy shook her head. "No, Sarah. I'm the one who should be grateful. You saved Caleb." "I saved him, and I won't let him die," I said. "But we can't let this situation continue. 10 years is enough." I looked at Leo. "You can't lie anymore." I looked at Amy. "Amy, you can't keep getting help secretly like this." "I know." Amy started to cry. "But I don't know what to do." "You'll know now," I said. "Caleb needs a bone marrow transplant. That's the only way. And for that, we need money and a donor." I turned to Leo. "First thing you're going to do is call New York and tell Ethan and my mom you'll be late today. A family matter came up." Leo nodded. "Second," I looked at Amy. "You're going to pack your things. You and Caleb are leaving here." "Leaving?" Amy was startled. "Where to?" "Caleb's hospital is in New York." Leo and Amy were both stunned. "To New York?" Leo stammered. "Sarah, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about bringing Amy and Caleb to New York," I said. "You can't keep going back and forth. And Caleb can't stay here. He needs the best hospital. He needs the National Blood Center, and he needs family." "But our place?" Leo hesitated. "What about our place?" "I know it's small," I said. "We have 3 bedrooms. One for Ethan, one for us, and the last one is my office. From now on, that room will be for Amy and Caleb." "Sarah," Leo stood up. "You don't have to do that. I can rent them a place." "Rent a place?" I laughed. "Do you have the money? After 10 years of lying to save money, now you're going to spend real money? Are you still scared? Or are you worried I won't be nice to them?" "No, that's not it." I looked straight into his eyes. "I've decided. Amy is coming to New York and living with us, in our home." I looked at Amy. "Amy, Ryan was a hero. And Caleb is my husband's only nephew. I can't let my sister-in-law and nephew live like this. Do you agree?" Amy looked at me, then at Leo, and started crying again. But this time, they were tears of relief. She nodded. "And one more thing," I said. "Money. We need a lot of money. I'm going back to work. I'll earn money with my accounting skills. And you," I looked at Leo, "you can't save on business trip expenses anymore. You're going to be honest with your boss about Miss Reed, about the contracts, and about the fact that you're not coming to Chicago anymore. Ask for a transfer to a non-traveling department. Your salary might decrease, but you have to be at home, in New York, with me. And..." I took a deep breath. "Finally, when we get back to New York, we're getting both Caleb and Ethan tested for bone marrow compatibility. You and me too. All of us. If Ethan is a match." "Sarah!" Leo cried out. "If Ethan is a match," I repeated firmly, "that's not for you to decide. It's a matter for Ethan and me to decide." I had already decided. A wife's decision. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a takeover. I was taking over this secret and solving it my way. 6 months later, New York. Our 3-bedroom apartment in Queens was more lively than ever. The sound of children shouting and toys clashing. "Ethan, Caleb, if you don't clean up your toys, I'm going to count to 3, and then I'm putting all of this in a black bag." I stood at the living room entrance. Hands on my hips. 2 identical little boys were wrestling on the floor over a single robot. "It's mine." Ethan shouted. "No, it's mine. Uncle Leo bought it for me." Caleb retorted. "Mom, Caleb is bullying me." Ethan ran over to tattle. "Who's the older brother? You're both the same age." I patted both their heads. "This robot belongs to everyone. If you don't clean up after playing, I'm confiscating it. Got it?" The two boys looked at each other, pouted, nodded, and started cleaning up together. Amy peeked out from the kitchen. Sarah, just leave them. Those little rascals, it's a war every day. I'll go and sort it out. It's fine, Amy. Just watch the soup. I laughed. Leo said he's coming home early today. He said he has good news. Amy nodded. In the 6 months she had lived with us, she had changed. She was no longer the timid, exhausted woman from the apartment. She had gained some weight, and her complexion had improved. She had started a remote job doing accounting for a small business. She was earning her own money. And Caleb was receiving intensive treatment at the National Blood Center. He was still pale, but he was bright. He had a friend in Ethan, he had a family, and he had hope. After returning to New York, we all got tested. Leo, me, Amy, and even Ethan. None of us were a match for Caleb's bone marrow. It was a shock. I thought Ethan would be the hero, but he wasn't. But I am the Iron Lady, Sarah Miller. I didn't give up. I registered Caleb with the National Bone Marrow Registry. And I wrote a story. A story of the hero, Ryan, and his brave son, Caleb. I started a fundraiser. Not in the way Leo had feared. I, as a mother, asked for help from my nephew. And people responded. Leo's colleagues, my friends, and even complete strangers. The money came in. All we had to do was wait. For a matching bone marrow donor. The sound of the door opening. Leo was home. Dad. Uncle. The two boys ran out. Leo was no longer a regional sales director. He had transferred to a management position at the New York headquarters. His salary was lower, but he was home every night. He no longer looked tired. He scooped up both boys. Were you too good today? I was, but Caleb wasn't. No, Uncle, Ethan wasn't. Leo laughed and looked at me. Sarah, Amy, come here. I have something to tell you. We gathered in the living room. It's good news. Leo's voice was excited. I just got a call from the blood center. They found a match for Caleb's bone marrow. Amy was stunned. She covered her mouth with her hands. Really? Leo? It's true, Leo nodded. A donor in Germany. It's confirmed, and next week. Next week, Caleb can have the surgery. Amy burst into tears. They were tears of joy. She hugged me tightly. Sarah, Sarah. I couldn't hold back my tears either. I hugged her back. That's wonderful. That's really wonderful, Amy. It's going to be okay now. Ethan and Caleb didn't know what was going on, but they joined in and hugged us too. Mommy, why are you crying? Auntie, Amy, why are you crying? Leo stood there, looking at the four of us. He was crying too. The family dinner that night was probably the most delicious meal we had had in the past 6 months. Night came. The two boys were asleep, and Amy had gone to her room. Leo and I stood on the balcony. Thank you, he said, hugging me from behind. Sarah, thank you. For what? For everything. For giving Caleb your blood, for bringing them here, for not leaving me. I turned around. I told you. I'm an accountant, and I was just correcting the books. You're really something else, he laughed. You turned my life of red ink into a profit. The accounting isn't over yet, I pinched him. You still owe me. A 10-year debt. I'll pay it back. I'll spend my whole life paying it back. He leaned in and kissed me. A kiss that no longer tasted of lies. It tasted of family. I looked into the house. The place where Amy slept, where 2 children dreamed, and where Leo stood beside me. My family. It was no longer the perfect, model home-like family. It was messy, noisy, and full of problems. But it was a complete family.